Okay, so I have decided to do a ongoing series that I have yet to name. This is part 1, okay? And it is all about learning from 7, 8, and 9-figure companies, okay? It is about pulling out the different pieces that I learn that make these huge brands successful. I'm doing this series because I read a lot of books, okay? And one of the genres that I really love to read about are the Nikes and the Starbucks and the Apples and some of the other brands that a lot of people have never heard of. They're $100 million companies or $1 billion companies, right? And I'm learning all of these things. And where am I going to put it? Where am I going to put it, people? You. You're going to get it. Okay. So if this is not your favorite kind of content, listen to something else on the podcast. There's lots of different topics. But in this particular series, which I will eventually name, I'm going to be pull out pieces and they will be singular, right? The goal is to be able to take one piece and say, okay, how could you then implement this? Or at the very least, think about this for your own brand. Okay. All right. So let's do it. So here's where I would love to start. What would it take for this next quarter, no matter what point you're listening to this, to be your breakout quarter? Now, you can define breakout, but like just for a second, what would it take for this next quarter to be a breakout quarter? Okay. This is the question that my clients and I worked through in a previous quarter, right? And I thought, oh, this would be a great thing to bring to the podcast and talk about the number one thing that it requires for you to have a breakthrough quarter and to use $100 million brand as an example. Okay. As I mentioned, I read a lot of stories of highly successful people, celebrities, as well as companies. Okay. And one of the ones that I most recently came across was around Mielle Organics. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing the first name of this brand correctly, right? They are a hair care brand. They appear to be a hair care brand for Black people. I've never used it, but that's what it's giving. Okay. They scaled to $100 million. They were then acquired. The amount of money that they were acquired for is private, but it was close to $1 billion. Billion with a B. Okay. Just so we're clear. And what also makes this even more historic is that in the acquisition, she negotiated to stay on as the CEO. Right. And so, how crazy is it to get millions and millions of dollars in a payout and still have a multiple six-figure salary because you love your company? Like most people who get acquired, they do not stay on as a CEO. So this was a phenomenal story in lots of different ways. And I'm sure I will be coming back and talking about this brand again and again. But here's the one thing in relation to our question of how could this next quarter be your breakout quarter? Okay. So one of the things that I pulled about her story was she started her company after losing her 8-month-old son. That's a whole thing within itself. The average person is not starting a business, especially a super successful business, after a devastating loss like that. And I'm not suggesting that she lost a child on Tuesday and started the business on Wednesday. Like, absolutely not. But her entire motivation, her entire focus came after losing her 8-month-old son. And what she talked about was how it gave her so much courage, and specifically courage to live on her own terms, because she felt, what else could I lose? Like, this was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. So if I could lose this, nothing else can be that bad. That was her mindset that gave her the courage to try this new thing. And she spent a lot of time talking about she grew up really focused on safety, right? A lot of women, our core value is safety, even when we don't say it, right? And on top of that, she grew up in a house where her mother really tried to give her stability, right? Like she really focused on, hey, get a stable job, get a job that you'll never have to worry about. And so she became a nurse, right? It's like a recession proof job. There's always going to be a need for nurses, right? And she basically went on to share her story about going from being a nurse to starting this hair care brand, and how people often talk about basically not being afraid, right? Trying to get out of fear and right? And what she said, she's like, no, like right now, even 3 years after the acquisition, I'm still scared, right? I was scared when I started. I was scared at the millions of things that happened along the way, right? I got acquired. I'm still scared 3 years later. That was her whole point. Okay. And what I want you to be able to hear is that in order to have a breakout quarter, what it requires, right? It requires many things, to be clear: competence, consistency, all these different things. But mostly what it requires is courage, my friend. If you didn't do anything but this one thing, right? If you didn't do anything else and you just, you know what, I'm going to do one, like, courage is it. Okay. Courage is it, my friend. You hear me talk about this all the time, but it's first principles thinking. We have to learn to do what matters most, right? And here's the truth. Most people, like a lot of people fail, less qualified people than you, by the way, right? A lot of people who are less qualified than you as the expert who is listening to this, and they're making more money, they have bigger followings, more freedom, greater financial stability, whatever you might deem as success, right? Not because they're better than you, but because they are not leaning on their competence. They're being courageous. Like, I want you to hear that. She talks in depth about, she didn't know anything about hair care, not a single thing about the industry, not a single thing about manufacturing. There was no competence. What she had was courage. And so I just want to ask you, what are you relying on, friend? Right? Is it consistency, which is like your effort? Don't even get me started on focusing on effort. Is it your competence, which is like your education, right? Your expertise? Or is it your courage? How courageous are you being? I would love for you to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. I would love for you to send it to me on Facebook. And let's just have an honest conversation about, how do I increase my number? If I'm a 5, how can I get to a 7? If I'm a 3, especially those of you who are 40 and over, who have become risk adverse. Maybe you've gone back and gotten a job or pivoted the business or dealing with elder care, all of these things that decrease your curiosity and your courageousness many times. I want you to hear this. What could you do this quarter specifically to boost that number 2 or 3 notches? And however you answer it, do it.